Hey everyone, Laura and I are in the middle of a 3-week Yukon RV camping trip. We just spent a week and a half in the northern Yukon territory on the AlaskaHighway. Then we visited Dawson City and traveled across the top of the world highway into Alaska. We did some hiking, tent camping, side-by-siding, and exploring. The fall colors were out of this world. We managed to get some awesome drone footage. Feel free to check out our previous 2 videos if you haven't watched them yet. In this episode, we'll travel from Tok, Alaska, back across the Canadian border into the Yukon. We'll spend a couple epic days showing you the spectacular Kluane Lake area. Yeah. Spoiled birds. Later in this episode, we'll explore another abandoned mining town from the late 1800s, and we'll also show you how a river nearly went dry in 2016, causing the water level to permanently drop in the Yukon's largest lake. This is the White River, which originates from massive ice fields and glaciers flowing out of Alaska into the Yukon Territory. It flows inland and north to the Yukon River and eventually out to the Bering Sea. The river contains large amounts of suspended sediment. It transports 19 million tons of it per year in the upper part of its basin. This dramatically changes the clarity of the Yukon River, which remains sediment-laden from its confluence to its mouth. This is part of the reason why you'll see the river so muddy as it flows by Dawson. Kluane River, the mouth of Kluane Lake. The afternoon of September 13th, we arrived at the Congdon Creek campground on Kluane Lake. This is a beautiful campground, but both times I've stayed here, we had to camp in a site up in the bush a few hundred yards from the lake in order to avoid the wind. Let's go in for a walk down the road at Kluane Lake. Kitty cat, you coming for a walk? You get it, guys. You get it. Although I've made multiple trips to the Yukon over the years for work and play, this is only the second time I've had time to stop and spend a couple days here. In my opinion, it's one of the most beautiful regions in the territory. Kluane is the largest lake entirely within the Yukon at 81 kilometers long. It borders the Kluane National Park and Reserve. This reserve covers a massive 22,000 square kilometers and is dominated by the largest non-polar ice field in the world, with mountains and glaciers covering some 83% of its landmass. Although many of the glaciers are retreating throughout much of the world, some of these glaciers in the Kluane region are still advancing due to increasing snowpack and year-round winter conditions at the head of these glaciers. It's also home to 17 of 20 of the highest peaks in Canada, with Mount Logan being the highest at 19,541 feet. It's the second highest in North America, next to McKinley in Alaska. Much of the park and reserve has a cold, dry continental climate, although southwestern portions of the park are subject to coastal influences, bringing more precipitation. Due to its location, mainly north of the 60th parallel, Summers are generally warm considering the northern latitude, with long hours of daylight of up to 19 hours, while winters are long and dark with as little as 4 hours of daylight. When looking at this dry, arid land around the lake, it's hard to imagine the glaciers are only about 15 kilometers away from the highway at this point, flowing off the largest non-polar ice field in the world. Today would have been a great day to take our boat out, because as you'll see shortly, the wind often blows hard in this country. Looking straight ahead is Sheep Mountain, which has a hiking trail going up and around the backside of it. You'll find out why they call it Sheep Mountain in a few minutes. We decided not to hike it today, due to the top being partially obscured by cloud. My son Corbin and I hiked it to the top in 2022. The old abandoned mining town I was talking about earlier is called Silvercity, and it's located right here. It's a place I've been planning on checking out for a few years. I checked into it and read a little bit online, but I really couldn't find out a whole lot of information on it. It was a mining town in the early 1900s, and then it became a fox farm at some point, but I really couldn't find any information about that, and then it became military barracks during the construction of the highway in the 40s. Here sits the largest ghost town in the Yukon. The Kluane Lake area was the site of a short-lived gold rush in the early 1900s. Dawson Charlie, one of the discoverers of gold on the Klondike, staked his first claim on 4th of July Creek in the summer of 1903. By the end of that year, 2,000 claims had been staked in the Kluane region. The Northwest Mounted Police followed closely behind the prospectors, setting up summer detachments in canvas tents on Ruby Creek, Bullion Creek, and Pine Creek in 1904. A permanent detachment was established at the outlet of Silver Creek, where a small community called Kluane or Silvercity had sprung up. The first optimism about rich findings was deflated by low returns. By 1914, less than $14,000 worth of gold had been taken from the creeks, while one hydraulic mining company had spent more than $300,000 on buildings and equipment in hopes of striking it rich. Louis Jacoy and his brother Eugene had established a trading post at Burwash Landing in 1904. Freight for the post near the north end of the lake was brought from Whitehorse by road as far as Silver City and then taken down Kluane Lake to Burwash Landing. Kluane First Nation people used to live much of the year at the mouth of Silver Creek, a location near the present site of Kluane Lake Research Station. During the construction of the AlaskaHighway in 1942, a large camp was built at Silver City for the same reason the community was established originally. From here, equipment and materials were transferred to boats and barges. Oh yeah, it's all bug checked. Old wood stovepipe. Can't really see the wood stove.
You can see it in there?
No, I can't really see it.
This is a cool place for chicken to live.
Yeah, this is where the silver foxes live, because look at the chicken wire. I'll film those den boxes. The foxes, the foxes boxes.
Oh yeah, I guess we have to kind of go out the way we came in.
Oh, right here? These boxes?
Do you see it?
Right there?
I'm collecting these.
Yeah. There's trees growing up all through their...
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
There, probably once upon a... Like how long ago would this have been?
I don't know. I should check into it. Yeah, this is where all the foxes lived. I think it might have been before the Alaska Highway in the 40s, but I'm not entirely sure.
Like there's some, like, this is nice wire. That's
Yeah, it is nice
heavy
wire.
Duty. They don't make chicken wire.
Bet you
like
wish
that.
you could have some.
Well, yeah, because that's some good stuff. If it withstands a fox, it'll
Yeah.
withstand a fox.
Yeah.
Yeah, like look at how good of condition this stuff is. Like, shit.
Wow.
Those are wire cutters.
Yeah. Look at it all. In November of 51, 40 Canadian and American soldiers began building a 500-person camp at Silvercity for a 6-month-long training exercise for Army engineers. The exercise, called Eager Beaver, began in January of 52. The most visible project built during the exercise was an airfield that is still in use today. Flooding along Silver Creek starting on July 22, 1988, did extensive damage in Silver City and closed the Alaska Highway for 3.5 days. The Silvercity airstrip is still in use today. You can charter a plane from here and fly up over the ice fields and land on skis on the ice field. Corbin and I stopped here 2 years ago, but they were booked for the next couple days, so we couldn't get a flight. The next day, we managed to charter a plane from Haines Junction. We did a 2-hour flight up around Mount Logan and back. It was an epic flight and the weather was perfect. You want to tell us about the history of the Slims River? Yeah, in the Kluane Lake.
What would you like to know?
What happened?
This is why you don't get me to tell your stories.
Oh.
What are you doing?
I'm zoomed right in.
Ew.
I flipped it around.
So you can tell the story about you.
So, Kluane Lake, in front of us a ways, up until 400 years ago, used to flow out to the Pacific Ocean, which is behind us. It flowed in that direction. So 400 years ago, a glacier receded somehow before carbon emissions were being emitted, and that allowed it to start flowing north into the Yukon River and the Bering Sea. So 2016, the lake level dropped about 4 feet permanently because the Slims River, which is right here, started flowing again towards the Pacific from a point about 20 kilometers south of here due to another glacier receding. So now there's far less water coming this way again. I'm sure they'll blame that one on climate change, even though the majority of it happened over 400 years ago. But yeah, there we are looking south up the Slims River. A lot of dust storms occur here too. In 400 years ago, how did that glacier melt?
Global warming.
Before us bad humans started emitting carbon into the atmosphere, it's amazing that these 2 miles of ice, 2 miles of thick ice melted and all these things happened before fossil fuels were being burnt. A2's flow patterns have changed dramatically over the last 7,000 years, even reversing directions. Change continues. In 2016, most of the meltwater from the retreating Kaskawash Glacier started flowing south into the Kaskawash River, leaving A2 almost dry. Here in the center of the photo, you can see the level of the lake prior to 2016, and now the level is the dotted line over about halfway to the left of the photo. I don't know about you guys, but to us, it looks like the Slims River is getting pretty slim. Coming up in a couple of minutes here, we'll show you some history on the construction of the AlaskaHighway in the 1940s. Sheep. A little hard to hold still.
Are those doll sheep?
Stone sheep or dull sheep?
Well, dolls are the really white ones.
We're not supposed to fly the drone in the park for some reason. Probably because some people will harass the animals. We had to stay north of the highway and keep our distance, but we managed to get some footage. We'll take you on a little hike up Soldier Summit. It was here at Slim's Flats on November 20th, 1942 that a formal luncheon was held following the Alaska-Canada Highway dedication ceremonies at Soldier Summit. 50 years later, November 20th, 1992, the ceremonies and festivities were reenacted. Fearing a Japanese attack along the Alaska coast during the Second World War, the United States wanted a military supply road connecting Alaska to the south. In 1942, the Yukon's population more than doubled as American troops and civilians poured into the territory. In just 8.5 months, they built a rough road more than 2,400 kilometers or 1,500 miles long from BC to Alaska. It brought momentous social and economic change to the Yukon. 2 years ago, my son and I ran into a grizz while hiking up here. On October 25th, 1942, Corporal Refined Sims Jr. slammed on the brakes and put his machine in reverse just as a bulldozer driven by Private Alfred emerged from the trees. They had just linked the final section of the AlaskaHighway. The spectacular views at Soldiers Summit made it the perfect place to hold the opening ceremony of the AlaskaHighway. Imagine standing here for the ribbon cutting on November 20th, 1942, with temperatures dipping below minus 30 Celsius or 22 below Fahrenheit. Canada took over its portion of the highway in 1946. The road still needed a lot of work before it was ready for regular use. It opened to the general public in 1948. Going for a walk to the lake. This cat came earlier, but it doesn't look like he's going anywhere today or tonight. Is it Kong Dun Creek? Kong Dong. Kluane Lake. Yeah.
And in that same spot in the summer, the grass would grow so tall, so me and my friend would make like tunnels through the grass, little caves kind of through the tall grass.
Just a happy cat. Just been hanging out in the sun all day. The following afternoon, with winter on our tail, we packed up and headed her south to Haines Junction. I always do a pre-trip before I leave camp, and I was glad I did. The stofer nut rattled off this bolt. I just rebuilt the suspension prior to this trip. Sometimes you have to reduce the torque to avoid sandwiching the brackets. When I did this, it seemed like they lost their self-locking ability, so I even staked them. I had spare parts and put her back together and staked the shit out of it. I wanted nylocks because you can reuse them multiple times. Just wait until you see what happens in the next couple videos. As we headed down the Yukon with another sandstorm blowing down the Slims River Valley, we realized that we'd barely scratched the surface for things to do in the Kluane. We could spend a few weeks hiking the many backcountry trails, boating, exploring back roads and trails with a side-by-side. We'll be back. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. In our next episode, we head here to the most beautiful northern British Columbia town for some boating, side-by-siding, hiking, and exploring more goldfields. Do any of you recognize it? Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.